Moon. It is the most stable companion of the Earth and the easiest to find in the night sky. The rhythm of the phases of the moon has guided humanity for thousands of years. For example, calendar months, roughly equal to the time it takes to go from one full moon to the next. But the moon's orbit and phases may seem mysterious. For example, the moon always shows us the same face, but how much we see depends on the position of the moon relative to the Earth and the sun. The size changes all the time. Although it is a satellite of the Earth, the moon with a diameter of Abo. The moon is slightly larger than a quarter of the Earth's size. It has a much larger proportion than the planets of other moons. It means that the moon has a huge impact on our planet and may even be an important factor enabling life on Earth. There are various theories about how the moon was created, but according to recent evidence, it shows that it was formed when a piece of Earth was torn off as a result of a major collision and the moon sent its raw materials into orbit. Because the Earth and moon are very similar in composition, researchers say the impact occurred about 95 million years after the solar system formed. That is, they concluded that it must have occurred 32 million years later. There are other ideas for the formation of the moon. Earth caught the moon. It includes the idea that the moon broke away from Earth and that Earth may even have stolen the moon from Venus. The moon probably has a very small core. It is only 1% to 2% of the moon's mass and is roughly 680 kilometers wide. Probably mostly made of iron, however, it may also contain large amounts of sulfur and other elements. The craters did not erode because there was no air on the surface, which was filled with craters created by asteroid impacts millions of years ago. The moon has only a very thin atmosphere. Therefore, and without much atmosphere, heat is not kept close to the surface, therefore temperatures can fluctuate inconceivably. On the sunny side of the moon, daytime temperatures reach up to 134 degrees Celsius. If it's on the night side, it gets as cold as minus 153 degrees Celsius. The moon's gravity pulls the Earth and causes predictable rises and falls in sea levels, known as tides. Gravitational force of the moon leading to a relatively stable climate over the billions of years in which life could thrive. It could be key to making Earth a habitable planet by regulating the degree of wobble in Earth's axial tilt. Also, the ancient Greeks believed that the dark parts of the moon had seas. They believed that the bright areas were black. Renaissance astronomer Galileo Galilei, he was the first to use a telescope to make scientific observations of the moon, and in 1609, rough, which is quite different from popular belief that the moon is smooth, described a mountainous surface. Most of these early lunar explorations were either unsuccessful or only partially successful. However, over time these missions provided extensive knowledge of the moon's surface and its geological history. The United States sent astronauts to orbit and the surface of the moon in the 1960s and 1970 seconds. First crewed mission to the moon, it happened in 1968 when the Apollo 8 astronauts orbited it. Apollo 11 in 1969 landed its first astronauts on the moon, followed by 5 more successful surface missions. And I would like to add that the moon, it remains the only extraterrestrial object humans have ever visited. The moon has always been interesting to people, and humanity took its first steps on the moon a little over 50 years ago. But still, despite all the efforts to go to the moon, we don't know much about the lunar surface. But let's take a look at some weird facts about the moon that you should know. Research on this subject is not finished yet, but according to some studies, during the 4 or 5 day full moon, it becomes difficult for us to fall asleep. Our sleep time is shortened by about 20 minutes. Moreover, a 30% decrease is observed in brain flow graph findings during deep sleep. We secrete less melatonin hormone, and people who participated in the experiment stated that they woke up quite sluggish during the full moon. Moon, 2.5 billion years ago, it was much closer to Earth than it is now, and therefore the moon appeared larger. Since there is no atmosphere on the moon, there is no concept of night and day. When the astronauts arrived on the moon, they noticed how much darker their shadows were than those on Earth. But it's just physics that causes this situation. As for the reason, the light is not scattered because there is no atmosphere on the moon. This causes the shadows to become much darker. With this, the places where the sunlight hits also look very bright and bright. Imagine going to the moon and experiencing a moon earthquake. Moonquakes happen more often than you might imagine. But don't worry, because they are not as severe as earthquakes on Earth, but they can last much longer. There's a long time to go before that, but eventually it will happen. The moon moves away from Earth by about 3.8 centimeters each year. If this situation continues at this rate, in about 500 million years, the moon will be approximately 23,500 kilometers from where it is now. This divergence is thought to be the result of gravitational or tidal interactions between the Earth and the moon. Even this retraction rate is not constant and tends to fluctuate, and this is often linked to changes in Earth's climate or geology. There are many conspiracy theories about the moon. Some argue that the moon is an alien base or even a spacecraft. If this is one of the most favorite of the theories, it's about the Apollo 11 mission, where something strange happened. Radio contact was lost for about 2 minutes after the Apollo 11 lunar module carrying Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed. Some conspiracy theorists say that in those 2 minutes, astronauts found evidence of alien life. It may look spooky, but blood moonlight is just a game. Lunar eclipses are only during the full moon, can occur when the sun completely illuminates the surface. Usually the full moon is not eclipsed because the moon, it orbits in a slightly different plane from the Earth and the sun. World T enters between the moon and the sun and cuts off the sunlight, causing an eclipse. If the Earth partially obscures the sun and the darkest part of its shadow falls on the moon's surface, it is called a partial eclipse. Sometimes the moon, it passes through the lighter part of the Earth's shadow, causing a penumbra eclipse. Only experienced skywatchers can tell the difference because the moon dims very little. But during a total eclipse, an extraordinary situation occurs. This is because the moon is completely in the shadow of the Earth. At the same time, some light from Earth's sunrises and sunsets falls on the moon's surface. Because light waves are stretched, they appear red. It also appears red when this red light hits the surface of the moon. How red the moon looks, how much pollution in the atmosphere, T could be due to cloud cover or debris. For example, if an eclipse occurs shortly after a volcanic eruption, particles in the atmosphere cause the moon to appear darker than usual. While there are planets and moons all over the solar system, only Earth is lucky enough to experience lunar eclipses because its shadow is large enough to completely cover the moon. Some ancient cultures, they could not understand why the moon had turned red, and this caused fear in them too. And so remember that everything is temporary. Feelings, so are thoughts and people. So instead of being addicted to these kinds of things, take a look at this information I told you, because, as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living.